Rugby league is a sport that is regularly dragged through the media with negative headlines and stories, so it is probably no surprise to most that there are integrity issues within the sport. Corruption affects a broad range of sports and individual athletes, from the more prominent offenders involved in soccer, cricket, horse and greyhound racing to the less obvious participants in snooker and badminton. Corruption is not confined to athletes, coaches and referees, but also activities and behaviours conducted by agents, club and federation officials and organised crime entities. There is a distinct lack of a universally accepted definition of corruption. In the sporting context, it is often restricted to the act of match fixing. Alternative definitions have described corruption as manipulation or attempted manipulation of a result or aspect of a game with the intent of enriching the sport's betting market. Further definitions seek to include doping and the use of performance-enhancing drugs. This lack of a universal definition of corruption makes it hard to discipline those suspected of performing acts that would affect the integrity of their particular sport. Gorse and Chadwick provide perhaps the most inclusive definition, comprised of 4 subcategories. Match-fixing betting related, with the manipulating of results to secure financial reward through betting operators. Match-fixing non-betting, where results are fixed to ensure a match outcome or influencing the actions of officials to ensure victory. Doping, and the use or misuse of inside information to determine betting patterns. It has been reported that the opportunity for corruption in sport is distinctively increasing year by year. The increased accessibility of betting has allowed for more anonymity and therefore harder to track unusual bets and who is placing them. This is just one example. Possibly the biggest restriction, though, is the limit on the information sharing arrangements. Specific calls have been made to relax Commonwealth laws restricting law enforcement from sharing information obtained from telephone interceptions with other concerned agencies. State and territory laws also limit what information can be disclosed to sport regulatory and integrity bodies by law enforcement. However, consultations are being undertaken to resolve these. The National Policy on Match Fixing in Sport was endorsed by Australian Sports Ministers on June 10, 2011. This policy defined match fixing as manipulation of an outcome or contingency by competitors, teams, sports agents, support staff, referees and officials, and venue staff, and has a broad range of inclusions. One of the aims of the national policy is the promotion of information sharing between Commonwealth and state and territory governments, law enforcement, sporting bodies, and betting operators, and a consistency in methods of response and development of sports-based codes of conduct. In 2012, the Commonwealth Government established the National Integrity of Sport Unit. The NISU has a broad range of coordination, monitoring, compliance auditing, and advisory roles. The NISU joins recently established integrity units in major sporting codes such as the NRL. These codes of conduct and contracts have been used as a primary sanctioning mechanism for sports, such as the NRL, to act as the first line of defence and means of deterrence. The case that led me to review match fixing in rugby league was a 2010 investigation into footballer Ryan Tandy's involvement in a betting event. On August 21, 2010, the Canterbury Bulldogs played the North Queensland Cowboys. In one of the opening plays of the game, Tandy, playing for the Cowboys, deliberately knocked on the ball, giving the Bulldogs a penalty. The TAB reported that 95% of the bets placed on that particular game were for the unusual choice of a penalty being the first scoring play of the game. In October 2011, Tandy was found guilty. He was fined $4,000 and handed a 12-month good behaviour bond. Tandy tried to appeal this decision but was unsuccessful. More recently, 5 players were suspended, 3 game day officials were terminated, and 9 more suspended for betting breaches after an audit of betting records was conducted in 2014. The audit found a further 1,500 registered players, officials and staff had a betting history, but there was no evidence of serious abuse of the betting laws or match fixing. Since Tandy's case, the NRL has put together media statements and implemented procedures to help manage these types of integrity issues. The Players' Code of Conduct now has a point stating do not bet or otherwise financially speculate directly or indirectly on the outcome or any other aspect of a rugby league match or competition in which you are involved. Referees, touch judges and any other officials are required to avoid any situation which may lead to a conflict of interest both on and off the field. Similar recommendations are made in individual state and territory rugby league codes of conduct. The New South Wales Code of Conduct even separately highlights gambling and game fixing and bribes. Recommendations to combat match fixing include education. Without going into too much stereotyping, rugby league is often termed the working class game. Many of our best players come from low socioeconomic backgrounds. Often this means they have already been exposed to gambling, drugs, and other criminal activities. Education programs have recently been introduced, but I think they need to target specific issues. The identification of vulnerable players also needs to be performed in order to intercept them before integrity laws and codes of conduct are broken. And finally, support. The provision of adequate support for those who are affected or could be affected by criminal activities. Unfortunately, Ryan Tandy was found dead due to a drug overdose. Perhaps a life could have been saved if some of these recommendations were already in place.